Good afternoon, YouTube. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you are watching. DutyRon back in again with another video. And today we're going to do an update on Orin and Orson West, the two boys, 3 and 4 years old, who went missing from California City on December 21st. A very tragic, frustrating missing persons case. These are two children. That's what makes it so frustrating on all of us. You know, we're all parents, grandparents, or aunts or uncles. And, you know, this is just a completely unacceptable situation for us to all be in. So I'm going to wait for a couple of people to share and join this live stream on a Saturday morning, Saturday actually afternoon for me. Some might be still morning in California, but no matter where you are tuning in across the world, I want to just say hello and thank you. And a special thank you to my channel members, my Patreon supporters, and all who subscribe to the DutyRon family. Hello, Diane, Dookie4000, first one in. Great to see you. Hi, Cheryl. Hello, Sonia, Carol, Loving Alaska. Thank you for joining. Sonia, Debbie, Inner Peas, Moonlight, Angie, Nancy, Kim, Jeanette, Just Me. Thank you for coming from Baltimore. Karen, Kolb, thank you for being here. Much love and respect to everyone. I just finished the Patreon and channel member only live stream. It was about an hour long. We touched upon this case and a few others that I've covered over the time. Again, if you haven't shared this video, please share and like, and we're going to get right into it. There's not a lot of updates to bring you, but my good friend Bayan Wang interviewed Mr. Klass from the Polly Klass Foundation. And there's a couple of things that he went over inside that live video that he did. So I'm going to play a couple of clips for you. Hi, Lisa. How are you? Good to see you. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being in here. Hi, Valerie, JJ51, Jordan Knight. Great to see you from Texas. I hope you guys are doing well over there. Sending a lot of love and respect and support to my great friends in Texas. It's been a terrible, terrible week for weather down in the southern district of Texas. So sending a lot of strength and positive vibes to my friends from Texas. Again, you know, this case is frustrating on many different levels due to the fact of information not coming out, law enforcement keeping information close to the vest, and we as human beings, we all get frustrated because we're not getting the information that we're seeking. But understand this, and I keep saying this, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record. That information's is staying close to investigators because they don't want to jeopardize. Cases take a long time to solve, especially something like this. So it's unfortunate, but that's what we got going on. So let me share these two quick videos with you guys, and then we'll get right back into it. And I'm going to share it out. Leave It a Beaver says, God bless everyone. Stay safe. Thanks to all Thanks to all that you do for this community. Let me share that. If I can get my mouse over there. Holy crap. I can't even get my mouse over to that screen. All right, there it is. Leave It to Bieber says, God bless everyone. Stay safe. Thank you. Thanks for all you do for the community. Thank you for your super love. Appreciate that. Hello from Jackson, Georgia. All right, let's watch this real quick, and then we'll get right into it. We're going to do a live call-in, so I hope you guys are ready for that. Make sure you come with relevant questions that I can answer. I can't answer questions of speculation because I have the answers to it. All right, here we go. This is our good friend Bayan Wang. Most of you have seen this already, but let's just watch this real quick.
Hey Alex, yeah, as the weeks have been going by in this case, we've seen how search efforts on the community level have started to dwindle, and so far authorities say that they haven't found any physical evidence of foul play, but since the very beginning of this case, December 21st, 2020, authorities have said that they do believe foul play is involved.
Do we have audio?
It's been 8 weeks since 3-year-old Orson and 4-year-old Orrin West were reported missing in California City. Their adoptive parents say the boys disappeared from their backyard
Thumbs up
and
for the
believe
audio.
someone kidnapped them.
They do not just roam around, these patches. They definitely, I think definitely would have been picked up or something.
This type of scenario is very rare, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. In 2020, they assisted law enforcement on nearly 30,000 missing children cases, and less than 1% of them involved non-family abductions.
A stereotypical stranger abduction is very, very rare.
Mark Klass is a child advocate who established a Klass Kids Foundation following the kidnapping, rape, and murder of his 12-year-old daughter in 1993.
Her last words were, "Please don't hurt my mother and sister," who happened to be sleeping in the next bedroom.
Since the tragedy, Klass has followed many missing children's cases through the years. He heard about Orin and Orson's case in recent weeks. Authorities suspect foul play, but have no physical evidence to show for it yet, 2 months later. And that's why Klass says he sympathizes with the community, as it took 65 days to crack his daughter's case.
It becomes a very frustrating exercise. You have family members that are worried sick, that are doing everything in our case that we could to keep the story alive so that law enforcement would have a full investigative unit on it until the case was cracked. So that put them in a difficult place, it put us in a difficult place, and put the media in a difficult place, because how do you report on a story day after day after day and say, well, there's nothing new to report on this story?
Orson and Orrin are the youngest of 31 other missing children listed on the California Attorney General's website. Both the extended biological and adoptive families tell 23 ABC News that they are hoping for the best outcome.
We just want them home, safe and sound, and, we're going to keep hope. We're going to walk with faith, leave it in God's hands, because he has the last say.
Jamal Watkins, Trezell's oldest brother, issued a statement to 23 ABC News that says, in part, "We are devastated at the disappearance of the boys. Pray and believe they will be found safe and returned home. There is someone out there who knows the truth, and the official search must continue to find the boys and reveal what occurred." And here we are again, 8 weeks out since the boys were reported missing. We've interviewed the adoptive parents only one time, and since that time, we've tried to reach out to them multiple times. The latest attempt was today through law enforcement, but according to authorities, the adoptive parents do not wish to speak to the media at this point. We're live in downtown Bakersfield tonight. Bayan Wang, back to you, Alex.
Okay, so again, difficult at best. I must say, really. I mean, for all of us, we're all just sitting here pulling our hair out of our head, saying, "What is going on here?" I mean, it's crazy to say the least when you're talking about a missing person. When it's an adult, it makes it really bad. But now you're talking about two little kids, and that's really what makes it frustrating on the 10th degree. And we're all just sitting here saying, what can we do?
Mark,
and really, there's not a lot we can do besides looking and searching. Thank you, Angie. Thank you for the compliment on the background. Black Rose 11 is here. Thank you for being here. Hello, Michelle. Great to see you. Thank you for joining. Let me know where you're watching, city and state, or your country, so I could say hello quickly. I know this makes the chat go really fast, but I love to do this with all of you guys because there's so many people watching from so many different areas. So let me see what we got going on here. Hello, Gayla from Sacramento. Great to see you. Thank you for joining. Tammy from CBI and needs to lean on them. There you go. Hello from California City. Great to see you. Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky. Gilroy, there you go. Checking in. Hello, Vinny. Good to see you. Hi from Scotland. Great to see you. Thank you for joining. Holy cow, Florida, UK, Palm Springs, California, Pennsylvania, Ireland, Colorado, Texas, Manhattan, Kansas, North Carolina, says Tonka. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. It's hard to keep up. New Zealand, Colorado. I go back, by the way, and I watch this after. Hello, Soul for Music up in New Hampshire. Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you. Auckland, New Zealand, Kia Ora, West Central Texas, awesome. Wyoming, upstate New York. Everyone's saying they love me. I love you guys right back. Thank you. Hello from Bakersfield. Great to see you. Good to see you, Bakersfield. Sending a lot of strength and prayers, Ruby. Thank you for joining. Long Island, says Lisa D. Welcome from my neighborhood. You're in the hood here, Long Island. Thank you for joining. All right, Linda from Tennessee, British Columbia, Canada. Wendy, let's show Polly Klass interview. This is her dad. This is a man who has a lot of resources available to him. Vacaville, California. Hello, Joy Catcher. Good to see you. Lucretia, love and respect to you. Becky's from Tennessee. Awesome. The people are just keep piling in. Diane is from across the street. She lives straight across the street from me. Great to see you, Diane. All right, let's rock and roll with this. Let's hear what Bayan Wang had to say with Mr. Klaas. All right, here we go.
Mark, I really appreciate you joining me. Just for the record, can you spell your first and last name for me?
Sure. My name is Mark Klass. That's MarkKlaas, and I am the founder of the Klass Kids Foundation.
Tell me a little bit about that foundation.
Well, the Klass Kids Foundation was formed in 1994 in the aftermath of the kidnap, rape, and murder of my daughter, Polly Klass. We started the foundation to give meaning to her death and also to hopefully protect other children that might find themselves in her situation or similar situations. So our mission statement is to stop crimes against children.
And for our story, what capacity, what credentials would you like to be addressed as?
Just as the founder of the foundation.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So before we dive into the situation out here in Kern County with the two missing boys, 3-year-old Orson and 4-year-old Orin West, can you give me a little bit of context of how your family was struck with such a tragedy as well?
Well, sure. It was on the evening of October 1st, 1993, that my 12-year-old daughter, Polly, was hosting a slumber party in the home that she shared with her mother in Petaluma, California. She was hosting the party with 2 of her girlfriends. And at about 10:30 at night, as the girls were going to prepare to go to bed, Polly opened the bedroom door and there was a knife-wielding stranger standing there. And he said, "If you make a noise, I'll slit your throats." He then proceeded to tie, bind, and gag Polly's girlfriends and basically steal Polly into the night. Her last words were, "Please don't hurt my mother and sister," who happened to be sleeping in the next bedroom. And it took the girls about 15 minutes to extricate themselves. They contacted law enforcement, and that launched a 65-day investigation into what happened to Polly. And we found ultimately that she had been taken by a recently released serial predator named Richard Allen Davis, who in fact had been released from prison for his second kidnapping 3 months before she disappeared. And that character now resides on California's death row. Not that that means anything at this point.
And since then, from my understanding, you've dedicated your life to, you made a huge transition in your life from the business you were operating to the front of missing children and policies around that. Can you explain your journey a little bit to me?
Well, it's a pretty hard journey to explain, but basically I found as we were looking for Polly during those 65 days that I was provided with very good information from law enforcement, that I had turned myself into an effective advocate for missing children, and really realized that there was nobody else doing that job in society, at least nobody that had any kind of a profile that was getting the attention of anybody that cared or mattered. So with the support of my wife, I launched into that, starting the Klass Kids Foundation, and got very fortunate. I mean, goodness, I was able to visit the White House on numerous occasions. You know, we became well known to the president, President Clinton at that time, worked with a lot of governors around the country, first pursuing things like Megan's Law, Megan's Law being the sex offender registry that gives the public information about those individuals that live in their neighborhoods, then ultimately into the Amber Alert and various other pieces of legislation that I think really worked to protect children from the predators that were in existence then. And we then started on an internet campaign. We started a search and rescue team, which is still very viable. In fact, we just had our busiest year in search and rescue in 2020, which goes against the grain. I mean, nothing seemed to happen in 2020 except COVID, but still there were a lot of kids that were being reported missing. And so we're 27 years into this experiment right now, and still going strong.
And I think your experience and your advocacy, as seen, across all media, a lot of media platforms have had has influenced a lot of positive change when it comes to policy and, efforts to make sure that these type of things are, from all fronts, organized in the search, that there, Megan's Law, that there's a database for sex offenders. I understand there's the 3 strikes rule also followed the situation. Was that directly related to
Polly and our crime? Well, in a way it was. I mean, it was the 3 strikes movement was started by a guy named Mike Reynolds in Fresno. And Mike started the 3 strikes movement after the murder of his daughter in Fresno back in 1992. It was really getting absolutely no traction, though, until we found out what had happened to Polly, because the contrast was so great. I mean, a sweet little girl in her own home, minding her own business, was invaded by a monster who never should have been out on the street. And when people made that connection, the 3 strikes petition absolutely took off, and it got millions of signatures. Every politician in the state got behind 3 strikes, and by February of 1994, 2 months after Polly was kidnapped, it had been passed into law by the legislature, and that November it was passed into law by a petition. Anyway, it was passed in the law by the people. And throughout the 10 or 15 years, I think that 3 strikes was really effective. It really totally helped to reduce crime in the state of California, both violent crime and property crime, by about 50%. So it was a very good law, a very effective law, and one that has been misrepresented by politicians ever since. And unfortunately, now it's just sort of a shadow of what it really was.
And since what happened to Polly, you've spoken to a lot of different families who've experienced their children and their loved ones going missing. And you've delved yourself into a lot of communities that have been struck by this tragedy as well. In California City, there's 2 missing boys that you and I have spoken about in the past on the Nancy Grace show.
Yeah.
3-year-old Orson, 4-year-old Orrin West. They disappeared from their backyard, according to their adoptive parents. And you know some of the details of this case. Is there? What do you make of it?
Well, it doesn't make a lot of sense. First of all, this type of abduction, the type of abduction that Polly went through, a stereotypical stranger abduction, is very, very rare. Less than 1% of all abductions occur this way. But then when you break it down into 2 little children as opposed to 1 little child, you've got double the trouble. Whoever's got the kids is going to have to somehow or another mollify 2 children and keep 2 children under control as opposed to 1 child. And I think we all understand when children are that young, it's not easy to do that. And then what's the motive? Why in the world would somebody take these kids? I mean, if you start breaking this down, you're going to probably find a small subsection of possible possible individuals who were involved. In other words, it's not a community that people come in and out of a lot. It's not a community that strangers actually go to. It's a remote community and a small community that's got a very finite population. And one would have to look towards that population, I believe, in order to solve this mystery.
And you were telling me a little bit about the aftermath of the investigation immediately following Polly going missing. We know that in this case, the California City Police Department asked the adoptive parents and many others close to the investigation to submit to a polygraph. The police chief of the California City Police Department didn't tell me whether they actually took the test or not. But there are no suspects named. There are no persons of interest. But with that, in your experience, being the father of Polly Klass, were you also asked to submit to a polygraph? What was that experience like?
Well, first of all, I was as upfront with law enforcement as I could be from the very beginning. I made a very conscious decision not to get an attorney involved because I wanted to be able to be a spokesperson for myself and for my child. And they told me up front that in the vast majority of these kinds of cases, family members are involved. And the best way I can serve Polly's situation is to clear myself from suspicion. And I told them that whatever it would take to do that, they could interrogate me as long as they wanted about anything they wanted. They could give me a polygraph, which they ultimately did. And I was able to eliminate myself early enough so that they could then take the vast resource. And when the FBI comes into a case, it does bring vast resource and knowledge with it. So they could then take that and direct it into other areas. They could focus on other family members, perhaps. They could focus on friends and acquaintances of the family. They could focus on the registered sex offenders that lived within the community, who the public was not aware of at that time, only that there were some of these shady people out there somewhere. And so that they could even take a look at people that made deliveries to the home, the mailman, anybody that could have some kind of a tangential relationship with these kids one way or another. And then hopefully they continue to eliminate until they finally found the guy that actually committed the crime. All of that makes great sense in theory. But if you're dealing with a true stranger abduction, it's going to be very, very difficult, short of finding the child or finding some, very specific evidence to make the case one way or other as to what had happened to that child. I think we were fortunate because after 2 months, somebody wandered upon a crime scene on property that they owned, and that ultimately resulted in figuring out who had taken Polly, going and making the arrest on that individual, and ultimately recovering Polly's remains. So I guess the short answer is you listen to the cops, you do as many media interviews as you can possibly do, get people invested in the case, get people to understand and know the children, so that all eyes are out there looking for the kids. And with some luck and some great investigation, they'll be able to bring a resolution, whatever that may be.
So in your journey, you've noticed, in your experience, I should say, that one of the rules of thumb when your kids go missing is to do as many media interviews as possible. Is that true?
Well, I believe that's true. And I also believe that the people that should be doing those interviews are family members, are the parents of the missing kids, because they're the ones that are going to be able to get out there, make the best case, get people to understand who these children were, share information about the children, and hopefully enlist the public in being invested in bringing the kids home. Now, I know in a lot of cases, the parents may not speak very good English, or they may have other barriers that they're dealing with. So somebody else might come in and be a spokesperson on behalf of the family. But I always believe that the family is the best resource in these kinds of situations.
Got it. Now, if I could just ask, it was more than 60 days it took to find out exactly what happened to Polly. It's been about 4 weeks so far, 8 weeks since the disappearance of the two toddler brothers here in Kern County. Every day that goes by, there's a little more tension in the community. They want to know what happened. They want to have at least a glimpse of the investigation from the police department. Can you talk about the investigation that you experienced? Was information from authorities passed along to you throughout the way, or how much stuff was
happening? This is important. Listen to this. Listen to this.
Until after you guys found Polly.
Well, I knew that they were out there. I mean, I knew that there were a lot of cops out there and FBI agents out there looking for Polly. They told me a couple of things. I already mentioned one. They told me that the best thing I could do was cooperate and eliminate myself as a possible suspect. But they also told me, and I think this is kind of key, at least it was in my case, that any case-related information, investigative information, would be relayed to me by law enforcement before I ever heard it on the media. And they were very true to that. They were very good about that. But that doesn't mean they were releasing anything. I mean, literally, when you're investigating a case where you don't know who the suspect is, then it's going to create rumors. It's going to hamper the investigation itself because you're really kind of blindly reaching out, hoping that, you know, something will click and something will bring this whole thing together. So we would go days and even weeks without any new information on Polly's case. And in fact, quite truthfully, and in Polly's situation, it took 65 days before they were able to solve it. And that was by happenstance. It was because somebody found the crime scene on their property and they were able to make the correct connections and bring it to a resolution. Had that person not found that crime scene, we still wouldn't know what happened to Polly. So it becomes a very frustrating exercise. You have family members that are worried sick, that are doing everything in our case that we could to keep the story alive so that law enforcement would have a full investigative unit on it until the case was cracked. So that put them in a difficult place. It put us in a difficult place. It put the media in a difficult place, because how do you report on a story day after day after day and say, well, there's nothing new to report on this story? I mean, it's so terribly frustrating for absolutely everybody involved. But for us, the police were very good about giving us case information. I understand that they didn't want to screw up the investigation in any way. They didn't want to reveal things that may not be true or that hadn't been proven correct so far. But still, it leads you down a rat hole, quite frankly, and you wonder if it's something you'll ever be able to get out of.
And after basically everything was crossed off the list and you guys ultimately found out what happened to Polly, were there parts of the investigation that were then revealed to you on what was happening behind the scenes that you may not have been aware of?
Well, some things, sure. I mean, I became friends with many of the law enforcement individuals involved, and they had a couple of suspects at different times. There was some guy that had tried to commit a similar kind of crime that was kind of bushy-haired and everything, who they were very, very hot on for a while, but that individual proved to be nothing. There was an extortion attempt. There was some guy who said he'd let Polly go if they gave him $10,000. There's all kinds of things going on in the background. You've got the psychics are just everywhere. It's awful. And they're all telling you the same story, basically, hoping that they can somehow get a handle on that reward if and when the case is ever cracked. But it's a cesspool. It's a cesspool for absolutely everyone involved, and the sooner that it can be the sooner it can be solved, the better off for everybody. Which again is why mom and dad, whether they're biological or whether they're step parents, should be in the middle of this thing. They should be talking to the police. They should be talking to the media. They should be talking to the public, and they should be doing everything they can to make the case that those boys are viable, valuable, and need to be found.
Certainly. You're talking about reward money. What was it back then for Polly? And I know you adjust for inflation, but I know now there's a more than $120,000 in reward money out there for the two missing boys here, and it's generated a lot of tips to the California City Police Department. They say they've gotten over 2,000 tips, but they said there hasn't been a single credible one. Is that kind of what you guys realized with the reward money for Polly? Was there just a lot of people coming forward, but nothing really panned out?
Yeah, the FBI was dealing with a new kind of computer system back in '93. It was called Rapid Start, and what it did is it helped them to sort out the various tips. Is it a hot tip? Is it a cold tip? But when you start putting loads of money out there for the public, you're going to get people that are going to try and grab that piece, like I mentioned just a few moments ago with the psychics. Now, there's basically two kinds of rewards. There's a reward for the recovery, the safe recovery of the child, and then there's a reward for information leading to the arrest and prosecution of the individual that is responsible for having committed the crime against the child. And so depending on which kind of a reward they have out there, or maybe there's a couple of rewards, you're going to get people, focused on those different kinds of things. Now, they'll get thousands of tips. They'll get a tip like, we were driving down Highway 4 and we saw a car coming the other way that had two young black boys in the back seat, and we think it's them. Well, there's nothing that can be done with anything like that. It's just a quick sighting, and it's just based on your desire to help and hope that maybe, you can help bring a resolution to this thing. And then there are the much more, the much more realistic types of tips that people actually saw the kids in a certain place or took pictures of the kids or heard somebody talking about the kids, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the reward thing is tough, man. It's really tough. We were very fortunate. In our case, the actress Winona Ryder, who actually came from Petaluma, California, came forth. She went to the FBI and said that she wanted to give $1 million reward. Well, they said, if you do that, we're going to be inundated with these tips. And so they ultimately decided upon a $200,000 reward. But still, there were so many people from all over the country that were calling, that were contacting law enforcement, that it overwhelmed. It had just overwhelmed the investigative force. They just, they'd go out in the morning and have to debunk 3 or 4 of these tips every day. And so it just goes on and on and on. It's brutal.
And I know that you guys had, that $1,200,000 reward you mentioned was for Polly, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. For out here in California City, like I said, there, is $120,000 reward. California City Police Department are dealing with numerous tips a day. And they have said they've, allocated a lot of resources to have to, document the tip, go out there, follow through to cross it off the list. So they've been doing that daily here. I want to share some of the circumstances of this case to see just kind of what your thoughts are. So with any missing persons case, you always start closest to who saw them first, start talking to family, and then work your way out. Well, there's been a lot of investigative pieces that have happened at the house. We're talking, they brought search dogs in the home, and they found the scent of the boys inside the home, but not outside the home. They brought cadaver dogs into the home. They issued a search warrant, took the adoptive parents' cell phones, which have since been returned. They tested the car with luminol, the parents' car. They dug up the whole backyard. They didn't find anything there. They brought imaging devices to shoot even deeper into the ground to see if the boys were there. And so far, as what we know in the media, there has been no sign of them in that area.
I mean, it's obvious. It's obvious that they're looking very, very close to home. That if they're not putting their full investigative resource into the family itself, they're certainly putting a large amount of that resource into the family themselves. And that if 8 weeks later, that kind of activity is still going on and the family has not been able to extricate themselves from suspicion, then they got a lot of splaining to do, don't they?
Well, there's been a lot of, web sleuths and people out there who have been coming up with their own conclusions. But I know that the community is incredibly frustrated, wondering why, it's been 8 weeks and there hasn't been any, hard hitting physical evidence showing what happened to these guys. The police department said, hey, we don't have a single piece of physical evidence that shows any kind of foul play happened.
Well, I mean, first of all, we're talking about 2 tiny little children, and it's a big world out there. If somebody wants to get rid of 2 tiny little bodies, I suspect there's certainly many ways to do that. But it almost seems like one of 2 things happened. I mean, either, as the family says, somebody inexplicably took those 2 little boys, or that didn't happen. And that means they've got 2 worlds to search, the world of the family and then the larger world itself. And as long as indications keep pointing at the world of the family, law enforcement will continue to focus on that world. As I said, I think I've said this a couple of times, until you eliminate yourself from suspicion. And if you don't or are unable to limit yourself from suspicion, then you become the focus of investigation, you become the focus of rumor, you find yourself in a position that is very difficult to get out of.
It's also important to mention that families are usually looked at in these cases, right? Like usually the big misconception is, hey, it must have been the parents, or it must have been. So it's a difficult element to balance out, I would say, for the public, because you see time and time again, the rumors that surround any case directed at the parents or a sibling or extended family member. So I think that's kind of the balance of what I've been seeing happen, at least involving this case. There have been some family members that have shied away from talking because they've been getting threats. They've been already been portrayed by a lot of people out there to have been directly involved in some way. What is your advice to that? Because I know you went through.
Yeah, I went through that. I mean, people said that about me. There were stories that were going to be published about me. There were a lot of rumors about me, but I told everybody in my family, I told everybody that I knew, that we had to pursue the truth. That there's only one way to finish this, and that's to find out what actually happened and to be true to that idea. And that if we would, I thought naively at the time, we would be able to get our child back home alive, before I understood the true nature of evil, I guess. So that would be my advice to everybody, is to pursue the truth. And if you pursue the truth, then the answers you get will be real answers, if you get answers at all.
Mark, it's really been a pleasure having you on here with me. I really, really appreciate it.
Sure.
And we'll definitely be in contact moving forward.
Let me know how it goes, okay?
Will do.
What a great interview by Bayan Wang, our good friend. We all know and love and appreciate him for everything that we all love and appreciate everything that he's doing for the residents of California City and Bakersfield, and for these boys, by getting the story out and the word out. And I wanted to share that with you guys so you get an idea of what Mark said about some of the people and some of the conspiracy theorists. He called them cesspools. I mean, those are strong words. He referred to people from the psychic background, and those are his words, not mine, as a cesspool of information that doesn't help the case. Now, we all have our thoughts and opinions on that. And I'm not going to sit here and poo-poo what he said or try to discredit him, but that was his opinion and his thoughts. His daughter was raped, beaten, and killed brutally. And the only way that they were able to find closure is by a civilian coming across in a search of his daughter's remains. And how sad is that? That law enforcement and the authorities that are responsible for finding the people that go missing don't always do that. They rely on vigilance. If you see something, say something. They rely on people to conduct grid searches. So I sent out the link. It doesn't seem like anybody was interested in calling in. I put the link in the chat a few times for a question and answer. I wanted to do that with you guys a couple of times. I thought it would be good if anybody wanted to come in and maybe share their thoughts, because we're all going through this together. This is not just a thing of me putting out the information to you or any other content creator putting out the information to you. It's a two-way street, with the live chat and the comments and my website. A lot of people send in stuff and I engage. So it's important that we have a little bit of dialogue going between all of us. So it's important and also healthy for everybody to have a dialogue. Again, I afforded that here in the StreamYard's live call-in feature. You don't even have to enable your camera. You could just enable audio and you could come in. Maybe it's a Saturday and everybody's busy doing stuff. That's all good and well. But I want to say thank you to everyone who has joined, who has listened, who has watched these videos and have interacted with the chat in a respectful way. Dick Tracy, great to see you. I don't think that for me, I'll put it up on the screen. She says, Ron, hi, you should do a poll of who believes law enforcement is doing the best and that they will solve the case. I'm not sure if that would be productive because of the negativity. I'm looking for law enforcement to do the right thing. And I know from my career that, when you take an oath to protect and serve, you're doing the right thing. I have Ebony in that just chimed in, and I'm appreciative of her coming in. I'm going to add her to the stream. Ebony, hello. Good afternoon. Hi. Good morning, wherever you are. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. And yourself?
I'm doing good. Thank you. I wish that we had some answers here, and all of us are frustrated. So what's on your mind?
Yes, I was thinking, Trezell took his kids to his mother's house. I wonder if, and I'm sure the police did question, the mother of, it was the holidays, it was Christmas. So did she call Trezell and ask for all 6 kids?
Yeah.
It's Christmas time. Can you bring down the grandkids for Christmas? And
Right.
He only brought 4. And if he only brought 4, what was his excuse? Or, did the police ask the mother, did Trezell just offer for the kids to come down and only brought 4? And still, even if he only brought 4, did the mother go outside to the van and say, hey, Merry Christmas, and give the grandkids a kiss? Or
Right.
was Jacqueline and the kids at the mall and Trezell said her and the other 2 kids are, at the mall? Because clearly on that video, for me, at first I couldn't see it, but the more you analyze that video that I think AV Watchman had, you only see, regardless of what, 2 people coming back home. Now, on that first video of them getting in the van, yes, it did look like 4 kids, but I said they could argue the fact with their lawyer and say, oh, no, we were carrying the 2 babies. So that's why you only see 2 adults and then 4 kids, right?
Right.
But coming back home, we clearly see just 2 people jump off that van, not holding anybody, and jump right back inside that house.
Let me just say off the bat, Ebony, thank you for that question. I never saw that video. I got to go look at it because many people.
Oh my gosh! Yes, you do.
So I'm gonna personally take a look at that because so many people have been talking about it. Law enforcement definitely asked a combination of as many questions as you can humanly think, because that's part of the job of an interview. And when an interview turns into an interrogation, it's a different thing. I'm not sure if they got to that because none of us have access to law enforcement's file. They're not telling us. Okay. So in other words, Chief John Walker and any of the professionals are not saying, "Oh yeah, we backed them up against the wall and they came up with the wrong answers." They're not going to reveal that to us, because if they did that, it would it would hurt the case. So they may just be waiting for a couple of more trip ups. They may not have anything. And just because they're saying to the public, "Hey, we got nothing," that doesn't mean. I mean, most of us are pretty smart when it comes to law enforcement. They're going to be tricky about stuff. So I'm not going to give away the shop here. But just because they're saying they don't have anything doesn't mean that they don't have anything. So we're getting caught up on some of the smaller parts of the stuff.
Right.
Bringing the kids before Christmas, and we're all thinking of healthy families, healthy relationships, about how we would do it, right? If it's COVID and everyone's I didn't even get to see my mother-in-law for Christmas. She wouldn't come near any of us.
Right.
So everything is different for everybody, and some people are more paranoid, and some people are taking more precautions than others. So
Right.
it's really unfair for us to say, well, this is how it went down, or this is how it possibly went down, because we don't know. All
Well,
of it,
Ron,
all of
it's
it. Let me just finish for 2 seconds. It's all speculation, and it's good speculation to do that, because part of detective work is going with hunches and going with what your gut feeling is. So if we as regular people have gut feelings that something was foul and not right, it's good.
right.
It's good and healthy to bounce those ideas off of each other, but it's
Right.
not great for a civilian to go and start questioning a potential person who is a witness or has information, because that information is now called hearsay and you can't use it in a court of law. But if that person gets interviewed by a law enforcement professional, now that law enforcement professional can go into court and testify
Right.
that this was the information. So what I get worried about, and I'm always thinking about the best interest of the kids, the best interest of the victims here, right? I worry that when someone goes out and does this stuff, tries to do the right thing, they're not realizing that it could be the wrong thing, because when you have some good info, you're supposed to give that over to the police and let them do their thing, not you
Right.
do your thing, because you're not trained in it and you don't know what to do. We talked about it last night on my live stream with a retired homicide detective sergeant who's basically interviewed thousands of people who have murdered other people. So who do you think is best at this? Some person who's trying to do the right thing and has a good heart, or someone who's a professional that does this? So the choice is clear on what we should be thinking about. We should be thinking about the best interest of the general overview of the whole case, and not trying to spoil a good lead or spoil a
Right.
good information. Now, I'm saying it's all coming from a good place, because our hearts are heavy. We're all upset over these boys vanishing off the freaking face of the earth. It's ridiculous. I mean,
Right.
sometimes I don't sleep thinking about it, but at the end of the day, I get more nervous about people fudging up the case by sticking their nose into areas where they shouldn't be, and not having trust for the police it's counterproductive, because if you don't trust to give information to the police, then you're not going to be able to help them bring these people to justice, because you can't lock them up, Ebony. I can't lock them up because I don't got arrest powers anymore. But
Yeah.
the police do. So if we have good info, there's no reason for us to start shaking up a tree. If you get to the point where the tree needs to be shook, then you give it to the right people. And that's my point. And people just don't understand it.
Right. And I think a lot of people are involved. I think people are calling, and that's where John Walker was saying they're getting so many, tips, is because there's so many people that care, that are either there, outside there in Cal City or Bakersfield, that are on the ground, or just
Yeah.
from home, like myself, all the way, in a whole nother state in New York,
Yeah.
watching and just wanting to be involved. But
I
obviously
agree.
we know that something is wrong. So I don't know. To me, just that a simple question like that to me would help be able to try to figure out, because obviously we're dealing with Trezell, and I don't know what Jacqueline thinks that she is, but for Trezell, he has on his on one of his pages that he's a, what did he call himself? He is a supreme intelligence is what he calls himself. Right.
Yeah.
So if we're dealing with somebody who thinks that they're supreme and intelligent, and he was in the military, he could have taken some of those things that he learned, from in the military to
Right.
obviously
And law enforcement has access to his military records. That's already been shared, obviously, with the FBI and law enforcement. Everything about what he's done and the training that he's received in the military is not a secret. So
Right.
all of that information has already been shared with the law enforcement professionals. Hi,
Right.
Tracy Carter in the chat. Hi, welcome in. So Supreme Intelligence sounds like an arrogant, I'm going to bleep this, an arrogant, and it started with an F and with a K. So he sounds like an arrogant, and you know what? There's plenty of those people all over social media. There's plenty of young whippersnappers, young people who are out there that think that they're and stink. Okay,
Right.
that doesn't make this like, oh my God, he said he's a supreme being. He's into satanic stuff and the Pizzagate and all these references and all that stuff. That's not for us to investigate. It's for the law enforcement. And you bet your bottom dollar, every electronic footprint. Remember in their interview, he said they took our electronic devices. They took
Yeah.
all of our tech. Well, guess what? Everything that was in that tech, like, all of the pictures and all the things that he shared and things of that nature are now in the custody of the police department and investigative authorities. So
Right.
I appreciate you coming. I got another person checking in. I want to give everybody a chance. So Ebony, thank you. I hope we come to some type of resolve and some type of answer here sooner than later. I mean, all of our hearts are breaking throughout the world. This is nationally known and internationally known now. And it's about the boys. Bring them home and let's find out. So if anybody's got any information, call the tip line, help local law enforcement and the FBI in Bakersfield try to do what we can to get, some type of resolve here. So thank you, Ebony. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Hi, how are you, Eskies?
Hi, Ron. I'm doing pretty good today. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for the invitation. I have studied forensics and forensic psychology for a great many years, and I have a master's in sociology.
Okay.
But my key to this is I am from Arizona, where we're a very desert climate. And based on what I saw out there, it looked very desert. It seems to me that if they wanted to dispose of those children, it would not take much effort due to the animals in the area. Also, if the children did wander off on their own, it's the same thing. You're up against the elements, you're up against the animals.
Mm-hmm.
There's just, that's a coyote-ridden environment. And they're scavengers, and that's what they do.
It's the Mojave Desert. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a joke out there, So I think that either way, whether, God forbid, these children have wandered off, or much worse, somebody has done something horrible.
Right.
I think that for me, people need to, law enforcement in particular, and I'm sure they're mindful of it, remember that is a harsh environment where a body would be nearly impossible to recover, especially that of small children.
Right.
Now, my prayer is that, these children will be found safe.
Right.
I listen and watch every day on this case.
Oh, yeah.
But I think the fact that the adoptive parents have distanced themselves so much is something that everybody's keeping in mind, and with good reason.
It speaks volumes.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Klaas, Mark, I don't know how long you've been here or how long you've been listening, but
I've been with you for about a month.
So I'm talking about today. I'm talking about this.
Yeah.
So I played the Polly Klass, Mark, her father, and he mentioned exactly what you just said about the environment. Being in a desert environment in a non-populated area, it gives you so much. There's so many possibilities of where the two little boys, and he talked about the small stature and nature of their little babies, bodies. Easy it would be to secrete them somewhere or hide them or bury them or whatever. There's so many different possibilities. But at the end of the day, that's the task of the community and law enforcement working together. And that's why I feel like searches are a good thing. But it's almost like finding a needle in a haystack. And he said with his daughter, it was 65 days or 66 days or something like that. And she was found because somebody stumbled across her remains.
Yeah. That was a horrible case. I remember that case very, very well. It broke my heart. I'm a mother of 3 grown people, and I have grandchildren.
Right.
And, I look at this from the standpoint of not just somebody who understands the science behind trying to locate them, but somebody who understands the psychology of a loving parent or grandparent.
Right.
That distancing is a key to me. I'm adopted, but my dad would never, ever have distance had something happened to me.
Yeah. Wow.
He would have been on top of people, and he was a Navy man, so they're naturally rather distant.
But a natural, loving parent, whether you're adopted or you're biological, you're the biological child, a naturally loving parent's not going to act the way these two are acting.
No, they're going to gravitate to the case. And what bothered me the most about them was they left and went back to Bakersfield. Crazy. I would have stayed right there.
Of course, I wouldn't leave. Listen, I have Nisi standing by in the lobby. I don't want to be rude to her, but I want to say to you could run circles around me with your education. I commend you for that. It's not easy to go through that kind of schooling. So kudos to you.
You run circles around me, and thank you for your service. I am so grateful.
Thank you. And thank you for being a subscriber and a friend. I appreciate you being here.
You have a wonderful weekend.
Talk to you soon. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Nisi, how are you? Sorry about, am I saying that right? Nisi, or is it Nicey?
It's Nisi.
Okay, I got it.
How are you, DutyRon?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for coming up.
Well, thank you for doing what you're doing. It's so greatly appreciated. I wanted to just kind of offer maybe one other perspective that I really haven't heard from anybody about, what could have been going on with these boys. One of the bigger questions that I have not really gotten an answer to or comfortable with is what made these parents report them missing that day, especially if most people do believe that the boys never made it to that house. So what would make them report them on that day? And thinking about my background, I'm a nurse practitioner, and I have had multiple children. Sir, can you hear me?
I said thank you for your service.
Oh, okay. Well, it's my pleasure.
That's a tough profession to be in. It's not easy.
Well, and one of the things that makes it tough is dealing with children, abused children, and children with disabilities. Mm-hmm. And I had heard early on that Orrin, the oldest boy, could do sign language when he was like 1 or 2 years old. That immediately made me think that he may have had some hearing difficulties. And the other boy was 3 months premature, which also could have had some type of disability. And when I have children in my practice that are young like that with disabilities, 2 things happen. I have to fill out paperwork so they can get Social Security disability income that helps the parents. And I can't see these 2 parents turning that down. The other thing I do is I refer them to what's called early intervention. That's going to bring social workers in, case managers in, therapists in, sign language teachers in, whatever those children need so that they can, get a good start so they can be even and equal to other children. Right. And given this date and coming up on Christmas holidays, if the therapist has been trying to see them, the sign language teacher, the social worker, the case manager, if these people have been trying to get in touch with this family to see the boys, that may have triggered reporting them missing, because coming up on Christmas, all those people take off a week between Christmas and New Year's, and billing has to be done. So it could have been somebody on a different level looking for these children.
I got to say, Nisi, thank you for that, that actual statement that you just made. That actual theory is, I spoke about that. And if you look back in some of my prior live streams where I've had some, high-level law enforcement investigators on the panel, I did mention that because we as investigators always think about what's the motivation for them to come forward. Why, what's the angle? What was forcing them to report them on the 21st, and why that date? Some would say maybe they felt like someone was on to them, that the kids were missing, or maybe they were worried that someone might stumble across wherever they put them, if in fact they did do that. Or this, exactly what you're mentioning, a social worker, a doctor's appointment, even if they were homeschooled, you still got to report to the Department of Education about progress and updates. Maybe somebody wanted to do a home visit, like you said, a hearing specialist, a speech pathologist. We could just go down the line of what could have motivated them to have to do this or have to report them. But that's a very good point, a very valid point, Nisi, and I appreciate you bringing that to the forefront because most people don't speak about that. But I definitely did mention that, and a lot of viewers have sent me messages into the website somewhere, right around that area of somebody putting them in a position where they had to produce the children, and they were like, oh, now we got to do something. And it really seems from that news conference when they talked that day in front of Bayan Wang and the news that it was not a well-rehearsed story. It was a shitty story. It was full of loopholes and full of things that didn't make sense. So, everything is stinking and rotten in this case about what the adoptive parents have reported to the public the one time. So I think we're all on the right path with that. But what needs to happen is we need that one little piece of evidence, one little piece of somebody with a good heart and a good soul that says, I can't take this to my grave. I can't take the information that I have about what was maybe said to them and not come forward. So I'm hoping that somebody will call in hopes to, bring some closure for everybody, not just the family, for the world. The whole world is watching, This is
Right.
This is not something that is just limited to the Cal City, Bakersfield area or California or even the West Coast. It's an international. I got people in South Africa chiming in on this. I got people in Australia and Canada, just all over the globe. People in Japan are asking me questions about this. So that's what
we're in Mobile. We're in Mobile, Alabama, and we appreciate you, DutyRon. Please keep this in the forefront.
I have family down on the Gulf, on my wife's side. They live right on the Gulf in a little condo looking over the water. So my wife has been to the Gulf so many times. Mobile is a great community. So God bless you guys over there. Thank you, Nisi.
Thank you.
All right. Bye. All right, guys, we're going to conclude this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed the video that we shared with you. Please, if you have information, call the Law Enforcement Anonymous tip line. Call your local law enforcement. Get those tips in. Thank you to my Patreon members, my channel members, my people who subscribe, the moderators, all of you great folks that are interacting here in the chat. Much love and respect from DutyRon, from my house to yours. I appreciate you coming, and I look forward to the next time we can get together and have a conversation about this. So I'll speak to you soon. Again, have a great weekend. Much love and respect. God bless the world. God bless the United States of America. God bless each and every one of us here in the chat and all victims of crime and the families. We say a prayer and we send strength and positive vibes their way. Thank you from New York, and God bless.